If you've got a 2019 plus Sprinter and your climate control is getting stuck on either air conditioning or heat, you turn it on a hot day, you go full cold, and you get nothing but heat out of the vents, or vice versa, then this video might help you out. There's a valve behind the dash back here, and it gets stuck, it sticks the flap door. So we're going to go through briefly how to get to it and what we can do and see if we can get it fixed. This is fairly easy to get to. It takes about 5 minutes. You're just going to snap the cup holder out, and that pops straight up with a firm pull on either side. And then down inside your glove box area, you've got 3 screws you can access from the top, and then I think there's 12 total. You've got screws all around the perimeter, and then it's snapped in, as you can see, so a slightly downward angle for the pull, and then pop the weather stripping back, one access panel here, and it's pretty easy to pop everything out. Once you're in there, you can see the valve. Try to get a good angle on it there. You can maybe get an idea of how difficult this is to get to. There it is right there's the electrical connector. You've got a few Torx screws holding it in, and the electrical connector needs to come out as well. So if you've got a child or a wife with slender arms, probably make your job a lot easier. Otherwise, just clever use of extensions and scratching up your arms a bit, and you can get this bugger out of there. And it's worth the $1,000 you're going to save at the dealership if you can get it fixed. So I'm going to start pulling this out. I'm not videotaping the process of trying to stick my arm in there because you won't be able to see anything anyway. Now once we've got this valve loosened in there, it's 2 Torx screws. We're going to take this thing to full cold. And that should move the valve all the way to the side that you want it to be, so that you could pull this thing out and put it back in without having to relearn the valve motion in Zentry. And we'll go through that a little bit more later, and if we need to get into Zentry, we will. So full cold, that will hopefully actuate the valve. If your valve is already stuck, loosening those 2 Torx screws may free it up enough to where it can actually actuate and move for you. So it's a good step to take here. And then we can shut down and go ahead and pull that valve out. Alright, so I'm only about 10 minutes into this process. I have had it out once before. So basically, this is the piece we're going to be working on. Now this stayed stuck in the flapper on the inside, so I used a pair of hemostats to get it out. If you've got smaller arms than me, you can probably get in there. It's a bit hard on the forearms. I loosened the screws, which are Torx, they're T15s. And I loosened those before they fell out, and I turned them the rest of the way out with a magnet, and I'll reinstall them the same way. It makes it a lot easier, just a simple extendable magnet there, telescopic. So while I've got this out, I'm going to take apart this valve and take a look at the inside, make sure there's nothing binding up. Now these things are getting bound at one extent of their travel or the other. From my understanding, it's extra pressure being exerted on this piece of plastic into the flapper door assembly. So Mercedes' original correction was to loosen these and then retorque it to a lesser torque. It was like 3.5 Newton meters or 4.5, and that alleviated some of the pressure on this. Now, depending on how long your valve's been getting stuck, I don't know what kind of damage it does to the stepper motor, so it may or may not fix it, I don't know. But initially loosening mine worked for a while, and then it stopped working. So if this doesn't work, I'm going to replace this. They want $90 for this little guy, and that's one of the cheaper ones. Also, I've heard there's a software update that is going to limit the extent to which this stepper motor travels, so that'll prevent it from binding at the ends of its travel. One other useful tip I've been told once you get it working is never run it on full low or full high. Just run it up 2 or 3 degrees above low temp or below high temp to prevent it from traveling to its fullest extent, which again, to my understanding, is what that software update is going to do. So we're going to take this apart. From what I've been reading, you can take the end of this off, basically cut the end of this guy off, and that's going to prevent it from putting so much pressure when you torque down the stepper motor. and then also reduce the diameter of this shaft a little bit, a very little bit. So we're going to take a caliper to it and take a few thousandths off of it, and then also remove some of the end, and we'll do a little bit of trial and error. But this is again a last ditch effort to avoid replacing this whole valve, and I'll be damned if I'm going to the Mercedes dealership for them to upload new firmware. I've taken it in once or twice before, and they're abusive, $200-300 to go in and do a software update, and terrible turnaround times. So I've got access to Zentry, so I can do a relearn process on this motor. I cannot update the software to whatever their new version that does the lower travels. It just doesn't have the option for me in Zentry. It may for you, I do not know. But let's get started on this guy. You'll have to excuse the mess, I'm in the middle of about a dozen other projects. But basically starting out, we're looking at about 316 thousandths of an inch for the overall diameter of the part that inserts into the flapper door itself. We'll not be making any adjustments on this side. So let's call it 315. Be down to 312 around this end. We're just going to pop this, chuck it into a drill and turn it down a little bit. And again, we're going to remove the end so that it's not putting as much pressure when you tighten down the stepper motor. All right, we're at 310, so I'm going to give that a shot, polish it a bit, take the end off first. Alright, so we've got the diameter of the internal portion down to 310 thousandths. Pretty uniformly across, maybe a little bit narrower at the end, which is fine with me. You don't want to take it down too much to where anything's going to wobble or vibrate in there. I've also taken just a little bit off this mating surface right here just to reduce the overall thickness as it's clamped down. I don't know that it rides on the flapper door that way. I really just don't have that good of access. But when this is pressed in here and that's pressed into the door, if this is riding, I don't want any additional pressure. I'm trying to free up any tension I can from the stepper motor so it has an easier job of doing its job. So now let's go ahead and pop this thing open and see what we're dealing with inside before we put it back together. Alright, here we have the internals of this thing. This may have been a foolish decision in the interest of having a working stepper motor, but it's a little bit of a pain to tear apart. I don't see much in here that's going to be user serviceable. It's like nylon gears, so there's not a whole lot of point in putting any lube in here. I might put just a touch of some high-grade lithium, white lithium grease in there just for the hell of it. Other than that, it's got a tiny bit of a circuit board and a motor, stepper motor. Not much to it. All I've got lying around is some PB Blaster white lithium grease, so we're going to use that. I'm just going to put a touch of it on the face of the gears. Tiny bit on the worm gear. So as you can see, it's not much lithium grease. May not need it, but that's about all we can really do for it in here. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble. Not too bad, but as you can see, you're just going to put some pressure on each of these tabs. It's a little bit of a hassle, and probably not worth doing, honestly. Now we're going to go reinstall this. I'm going to do it first with some hemostats and see how this feels. I'd like to have a little bit of resistance still. I can take off more material, but I can't add it, so I'm just going to remove small bits at a time and hope that we end up with a valve that actually actuates. Alright, a couple of updates here. It did not work when I plugged everything back in, so I did have to get Zentry out. You can see the valve a lot better now, or the stepper motor. I actually buzzed a little piece off right here with my oscillating tool. I got tired of cutting my dang forearms up and stuff, so maybe breezy access for the future. I had to, if you have access to Zentry, I had to go into the N22/1 is the air conditioning module. And then you go into teach-in processes, which is under the adaptations tab. And you have to first run the teach-in of actuator motors and then run normalization of actuator motors. And that generally fails several times, and it takes about 2 minutes probably for the normalization to run and about 10 seconds for the teach-in. If you go to error codes, you need to clear this. I had to clear mine multiple times before it would actually get rid of everything. So it took quite a bit of finagling. I'm not sure if this is going to continue to work or if my stepper motor is bad, and in which case I'll be replacing it. I will report back on this video in the comments if you have questions or anything. I know it's not a real cut and dry solution, but if you take this to the dealership, they're not going to go straight to the stepper motor, and they are not going to, plug in quick and update your software and send you on your way, or at least mine won't. So you're looking at hundreds of dollars, and then I can get one of these stepper motors online for 80 bucks, and they're going to charge you 150, 170 for the part, 300 plus for labor. So to me, whatever you can do here to learn about the system and make any repairs is certainly worth the attempt. So I'm going to put my screws back in and run the van and just see if it's going to work now. If it's not, I'm going to order the stepper motor, and then I'm going to do the exact procedure I just outlined for you there. Now I've got a bit of an access panel to get to it, and it should make my life a lot easier. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and again, I'll report back if this gives any trouble. There's also some pretty good resources on sprintersource.com if you do a Google search. I hope this helps. Bye. If you haven't checked out the rest of the camper build, give it a look. Got more videos coming. And as I work on the van, I'll do more tutorials.